You were saying what a professional setup you've got here, Rachel.
We do?
We do?
Basically 2 yogurt pots and a bit of string.
Hello and welcome to the Joy Tuck Club. I'm Phoebe, and with me is my co-host, the always fabulous Rachel. We are also known as Red+Freckles and are the team behind Too Damn Trans. What are we up to this time, Rachel?
Well, on this Transpiration special edition, we get down and dirty with trans author Oliver Radclyffe, talking about every aspect of his life and transition journey, from an upper-class girl breaking gender boundaries and mother of 4 to his eventual coming out at a motorcycle rally. This episode is a lot longer and a bit bigger than our usual offering, and that, coincidentally, is also how Oliver describes his second book, Frighten the Horses.
Good one. But let's rein that in for now and share a little background. Oliver has been described as part of the new wave of transgender authors. He's been published in the New York Times' wonderful modern love column and podcast, and his first book, Adult Human Male, was released by Unbound Edition Press the same day we were recording this interview. He writes with a unique voice and virtuosity about the intersection of gender identity, sexual orientation, feminist allegiance, and social class. No one should miss out on him.
Absolutely. So sit back and enjoy. You'll hear a lot of love and kindness in this interview.
And in these times in the trans community, we could all use more of that every day. Rachel, let's roll the interview. Oliver, it gives us enormous pleasure to welcome you to the Joy Tuck Club podcast.
Phoebe and Rachel, I am so happy to be here with you this morning.
Oh, we're so glad you are here.
This morning for me, this afternoon for you, I think.
Yes.
Indeed. Hey, you and I swapped time zones. I moved from Connecticut to the UK and you moved from the UK to Connecticut.
I know, it's very strange. We're all so displaced at this point. The only person who's in the right place is Rachel.
No, not at all, because I was on nights.
You're not?
I was on nights last night, so I feel like I'm...
So you're displaced as well?
Yeah, I'm displaced out of time. Yeah,
we are a diaspora of trans people.
I'm nocturnal at the moment.
We are. So nights for what, Rachel? Was it your...
My current job.
Oh, yeah, your current work. Yeah, that's right.
Current work, that's it, yeah.
Oliver, so...
Brings in the pennies.
Yeah.
The pennies, yes, because podcasting isn't going to do that. But, Oliver, this is an incredibly exciting day for you.
This is a very exciting day for you, for me, but not for you. This is a very exciting day for you, Phoebe, because this is the day
that you're on our podcast.
Exactly. It's a very exciting day for me because it is pub day of my first book, Adult Human Male, which comes out today.
Congratulations!
Thank you.
That's fantastic, and it's
Unbound Edition Press.
Yeah.
Which is run by a wonderful editor called Patrick Davis.
Yeah.
And they are dedicated to diversity and to radical, queer, just really strong voices and strong writing, fiction, poetry, nonfiction. I'm part of their monograph series. So I'm being myself and Janet Hardy, who wrote the Ethical Slut, are being published together.
Oh.
So she's got a volume coming out, I think, probably about today as well. We're doing a couple of speaking engagements together. So it's very exciting. It's a tiny little book. It's only 80 pages long.
Yes.
It's just a little short book of prescriptive nonfiction essays.
Yeah. Because it's a monograph, it's on a particular topic.
It is. It's basically 2 interlinking topics. So it's interrogating the popular and erroneous idea that trans is an ideology rather than a physical manifestation of self, first and foremost. And also it's looking at the repercussions and the effects on trans people when our lives are viewed through a predominantly cisgender lens.
Yeah.
So in it, I talk a lot about I talk about the idea of the hostile cis perspective, which is a one step beyond the average cis perspective through which our lives are predominantly reported and viewed and discussed. And the step beyond that is the hostile cis perspective, which is the perspective that just doesn't believe that trans people exist. And this is where it ties into the idea that trans is an ideology rather than a physical identity. And the hostile cis perspective, because it doesn't believe that transness exists, is reporting our lives trying to discredit everything that we do and say and feel in order to remove the mechanisms that allow us to exist.
Right.
With the idea being that if the mechanisms for our existence aren't there, we will simply go away because trans isn't real in the first place. So it's really breaking down those ideas.
This is going to be a very good read.
Mm.
Yeah. Do you think this hostile cis perspective is also why even the most well-meaning of allies tend to get it so very, very wrong at times?
Yes, exactly that. And that's why I've written the book.
Oh.
So you bang on the head. You've nailed it.
Right.
I've written the book with a target audience of potential allies, who are being continually misinformed with the same type of misinformation and the kind of misinformation that makes sense to them because it tallies with their worldview. It doesn't disrupt their worldview.
Yes.
And I have the most perfect subject in my dad, who lives in England. He's this wonderful, warm-hearted, kind and generous, old school, upper class English chap.
Yeah.
And so he reads all the right-wing newspapers, and he has been so supportive and so accepting of me and my identity.
Yeah.
But he's constantly being fed this hostile cis perspective to the degree that he can't really see it a lot of the time. So he will send me these articles from England saying, I don't understand what's going on here, because it makes so much sense to him that it's automatic that he should believe it. And yet it's out of line with what he understands is going on with his son over here in America.
Yeah.
So those are the people that I've written the book specifically for, to say, look, you really have to see that the cis perspective isn't neutral. It's a position. It's essentially a political position. And if everything that you're being told about us is being diverted through that position, you're going to get a very different understanding of what our lives and what our needs are, because everything is the needs of cis people are constantly being centered in the conversations about the lives of trans people. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. They don't realize that when we talk about trans people, what we want to talk about are the needs of trans people and the experiences of trans people and the lives of trans people. And yet what we see talked about so much are, okay, trans people need this, but what is the effect going to be on cis people? How is this going to affect cis people? How is this potentially going to compromise cis people? How is this going to impinge on the needs of cis people? And that's fine. It's a conversation, but it's a conversation about cis people, not about trans people.
Yeah. And it's a conversation that was had around homophobia back in the 70s, 80s. Yeah.
Especially over here with Section 28.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
History repeating itself. Yeah.
Yeah. And what strikes me recently is the change when you look at the writing in the Daily Mail or the Telegraph or the New York Times too often as well. And then there's horrendous online publications that spiked.
That was that article we read the other day. It's like in 115 stories in the Daily Mail in January this year alone. Trans stories.
Yeah.
Was it 2013?
Yeah, there was 16.
There was 16, yeah.
And they're now using the language of propaganda, the techniques of propaganda to dehumanize trans people. So it's no longer enough to say that we don't have a basis for existing. They're saying we are a danger, of course. That's the trope that's constantly rolled out.
Yeah.
And also, we're just awful and ugly and, a lesser human being than anyone else.
Yeah. which of course plays into our deepest insecurities and everybody else's innate prejudice.
Yes.
So the damage, happens to everybody.
Well, so going back a little way, I love when we first met, and we met a few years ago, it seems, in the US, and I very quickly read the essay you'd had published in the New York Times, and I wept. I really did. You were unpacking and looking at a relationship you'd had in London, right, a long time before.
That's right.
Pre-transition.
Pre-transition, pre-coming out.
Pre-coming out, and it was a self-searching essay.
Yes.
Yeah. Because it was pre all those things, when you think about it now, would you have written any of it differently?
I don't know that I would, because the essay was written about a friend I had back in the 1990s. I was in my early 20s. I think I was 21. And I worked in a pub, and I became romantically involved with this guy called Mikey who had cancer and who subsequently died. And the essay was about this guilt I was carrying for my confusion at the time and the potential effect that confusion might have had on Mikey at a time when he was at the end of his life. And I think what I love about the essay is I was just at that moment of awakening. I'd recognized that I was only attracted to women at that point, but I was still in the process of understanding my gender identity. And by the time the essay was made into a podcast, it was in the Modern Love column of the New York Times. And by the time they made it into a podcast, I had started to transition.
Wow.
So the story was really part of that whole process of transition, of the unpacking of who I was and how much I understood about who I was when I was younger.
Yeah.
Because, there was just this common misconception with trans people that just the lights come on one day. And either it's when you're 5 and you wake up and you say, I'm a boy, not a girl. And then you tell your parents, and immediately everybody starts calling you by a new name and sending you to gender clinics, because obviously in England, there's no waiting list at all for gender clinics. And they certainly accept 5-year-old children. Or if you're an adult, that your gender identity is something you've always known, but you have been closeted about. And then one day you open the door of the closet and step out as a fully formed new human being.
Yes.
And of course, we all know that's not the way the majority of transitions happen. They're just incredibly slow. And it's this gradual awakening. And it's almost having a box that you take the lid off, have a peek inside, and then close the lid again. And then you come back a little bit later and you open the box and you have a peek inside, and then you close the lid and you walk away again. And that can go on happen for years.
Decades.
So when people say, when did you first know? My response is, well, which first knowing?
Yeah.
Because I first knew again and again and again and again. Getting yourself into a place where you can say, okay, I'm really going to leave the box lid open now, can take a really long time.
Took me 40 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I knew I was different for most of my life, and there were times when I almost grasped it.
Yeah.
But yeah, essentially it took me 40 years to actually come to the conclusion that this is who I am.
Yes.
And I think what cis people don't necessarily get is that for them, our transness becomes visible once we start transitioning. But before that point, they saw us as the gender that we were assigned as birth, because that's what's visible. And what they miss is the fact that that's what's visible to us too. And when you look at your own body and you have this thought in your head, there's something wrong here, this isn't who I am, but the physical evidence against that is so huge. You're wearing it all the time. You're in it. It's like present all the time.
Society's telling you that's who you should be.
Everything in your life is telling you that this is who you are, it's really hard to override that with something that seems so sort of esoteric, that seems so sort of almost whimsical. And it's really only once you start doing it that it confirms your suspicions.
Yeah.
So there is, I think, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I feel like there is just an element of you just kind of have to suck it and see. Mm-hmm. You really do have to just take that step and take the leap. And then it's like, oh, God, thank God I was right.
Oh,
this is absolutely right. This is, thank God. Yeah. Then there is that moment of, wow, this is real, this is right. And then, of course, God, why didn't I do this 30 years ago?
I remember taking that leap and then unstrapping my parachute as I fell. Yeah. I don't need a parachute for this. Yeah. I'm all the way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So I wonder about something, though, because you're born the only daughter of an upper-class English family. I read this on your website just earlier. Mm-hmm.
They did have another son, by the way. I wasn't the only child. I was the only daughter.
The only daughter, I see.
Yeah.
But you also had a penchant for motorbikes and escapades and so on that were not perhaps generally approved.
Yeah.
Do you think at that time that was just a willfully independent wild child, or were you actually already pushing the boundaries of the gender role into which you were born, but didn't?
Oh, I was absolutely pushing the boundaries of the gender role. That was my attempt to become a boy. And the way I understood it at the time was I wanted to be one of the boys.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that I actually wanted to be a boy because I just didn't think that was a possibility.
Yeah.
You know, as Rachel mentioned earlier on, we were growing up in Section 28, which for anybody who doesn't remember those times was when it was illegal to teach about LGBTQIA identities within the schools.
Yeah.
So we were given no education. There was nothing in the media. There was no internet in those days.
So it was a blackout of information.
So it was a blackout of information.
Also, you had the propaganda around AIDS.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. It was
exactly. I mean, it was a terrifying and as you say, blacked out time to be queer. And I didn't know that I was queer.
Yeah.
I had not. I had not accepted that I was attracted to women. I was fighting that on a daily basis. And with regards to my gender identity, I was acting out all of my innate impulses, but there was no way I would have recognized at the time that it was because I actually am a man rather than I just wanted to be one of them. I wanted to be with them. I wanted to be part of that scene.
Yeah.
So did you suffer from dysphoria, even though you might not have had a name for it? Do you look back now and recognize that there were signs?
Yeah, I do. But mostly it was not so much during that time. I mean, it's really hard to deconstruct it, but it was mostly prior to that time when I was at an all-girls boarding school and we had to wear a school uniform. That was really complicated. And then later in my 20s, when for complicated reasons that are actually, that I talk about a lot more in the memoir that's coming out next year, I decided to revert and go back to being a girl because I felt like that was my only option and I needed to get married and get a husband and have children. And so then I grew my hair out and I started wearing skirts and dresses and high heels and makeup. And that was horrendous. The dysphoria that started then was like being hit by a train because it was something that I was overcompensating and I almost, it's something that almost happened overnight because there was an incident that happened in my mid-20s that made me realize that I couldn't carry on down this kind of biking, single, half-person path and that I needed to become what everybody else expected me to be. And so it was a very abrupt change. And I slipped very quickly into alcoholism and drug abuse and depression and all the things that come along with the dysphoria.
Right.
And that lasted for 20 years. fun decades. During which time I had 4 children, gave birth to 4 children, got married, gave birth to 4 children, and then finally at the age of 40 came out as a lesbian first.
Yeah.
And then over the next 7 years, that was my coming out as trans. It was very, very slow.
Yeah. You toyed with the idea of being a butch lesbian, right? But that wasn't satisfying that gender identity itch that was starting to...
Yeah, it wasn't. And then I went through non-binary and thought, can I stop here? Please, God, can I stop here? But no, I had to go all the way. And so I did.
You mention an unexpected epiphany you had brought on by the well of loneliness. Do you want to talk about that?
God, the well of loneliness. Yeah, I wrote this essay about it in Electric Lit. And it was when I read it several times. And the first time I read it, I was looking for a lesbian role model. And because Radclyffe Hall came from the same background as I, she was English, she was upper class, it was very familiar the way it was a very depressing book and not terribly well written, but her lifestyle was very familiar to me.
Yeah. So
I read it looking for how do I be a lesbian? Obviously, this is not the best way to learn how to be a lesbian, by reading a 1920s mad upper class English woman who solves her problem by moving to Paris and then becoming wildly depressed. But the second time I read it, I was out and I was looking for something else. I was looking for how do I be a butch lesbian? How do I be somebody who's more masculine? And then I think the third time I read it, I saw all the subtext, trans subtext. And, obviously we can't label Radclyffe Hall trans posthumously because that's not that's an overstep. But the subtext is there.
Yes.
The descriptions of dysphoria are there, this constant urge to be more masculine.
Yeah.
There's a wonderful line in it where somebody says there's something of the acorn about her, and it's a little allegory, a little bit of symbolism of the acorn being very masculine, and that really woke me up because I wrote a poem when I just came out called "The Acorn" by coincidence, and it's a very kind of Celine Dion ballad, very melodramatic, over emotional poem, which I would never read to another soul, but it used the same metaphor. So it was through reading this sort of weirdly old-fashioned book that I began to recognize, like Radclyffe Hall, I'm not a lesbian and I'm not a butch lesbian and I'm not non-binary. I really am a trans man, and that's where I need to go.
Yeah. And then the description of the face in the mirror, which, of course, is something so many...
Oh, I think that resonates a lot with you, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it really does, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's... for me, it was also the girl in the mirror that I dream about. But mirrors, obviously, as a reflection of self, show what's wrong.
Mirrors are very problematic for trans people.
They really are. Yeah.
I write about them a lot in the memoir. And, that was a hard thing because it's considered very amateur in writing to use a mirror to explain a first-person description. Right. And yet mirrors were hugely emotionally challenging for me. And so I had to include them in the book.
Yes.
But it got to a point where I just lived in a house with no mirrors because I just didn't want to see myself anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. So, Rachel, you were fizzing earlier with so many questions.
I was.
And let's get into some of them because Oliver, you're also the first transmasc we've had on this podcast. And,
hooray.
Well, yes. And
yay for transmascs.
Yes.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes. And so this has opened up a whole well of questions.
Yeah, well, the first one is, we're all trans here and we're on the same journey, but we're going in the opposite direction.
I know.
But do you think the path is easier for trans masks or trans men compared to us? Yeah.
I'm going to say yeah. But I do think it's easier. here's a way of putting it. I think it's easier because we live in the present and then the future, and the past is the past. I think from all of my trans femme friends, well, okay, let me put this a different way. When I transitioned, the relief I felt wasn't tainted by the reaction of people in the outside world to me. Because I'm 5'3", right? So I'm a little bit little, and my voice still sounds a little bit transy, but that's probably only familiar to people who are looking for it. So anybody who knows I'm trans, or any other transmasc, is going to pick up on that little transmasc lilt. But to the majority of people, because I'm losing my hair and I've got stubble on my chin and my voice has dropped an octave, I pass as a man. And so the relief I felt in myself about, inhabiting a body that I'm aligned with and being able to act and behave in a way that aligns with who I am, was reflected back at me by how the outside world treated me. And although I have to be more careful around my relationships with women now. By and large, I'm treated with more respect now than I was before I transitioned.
You've actually answered one of my second.
Yeah. And so I remember when Phoebe was like maybe just a few steps behind me. And when she first started transitioning, I remember having a conversation where I was reassuring her, oh my God, you're just going to feel so great when you've done it. And I promise you it's worth it. And then I caught myself and thought, wait, I'm not taking into consideration the fact that if Phoebe doesn't pass, the way she is going to be treated by the world is substantially different to the way I'm treated.
Yeah.
And I remember her and I having a conversation about how previous to our transitions, she would have stood up to protect me against misogyny. And after our transitions, it's now up to me to stand up for her against misogyny. So this I write about in Adult Human Male, this precise concept that our power in the world has shifted through perception. So Phoebe isn't less strong than she was before she transitioned, and I'm not more strong than I was before I transitioned. But the way we're perceived by the world has changed. So that power dynamic has shifted in a way that is completely beyond our power to control.
Yeah. So how has that different treatment manifested? Do you find yourself listened to more, questioned less? And males are assumed to be more competent than females. So,
well, because I don't work in a corporate environment. I think a lot of transmascs who work in office environments or corporate environments see that immediately.
Yeah.
But
I've seen the opposite.
Yeah, of course.
Now in a conversation, I'm not listened to, and my opinions are constantly questioned.
Yeah.
Whereas before I transitioned, that never happened.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
we were talking about it before, weren't we?
Yeah.
But in some weird way, I find that strangely validating.
Yeah. Yes. Because people are convinced that you're a woman. Yeah.
Oh, look, I've been ignored again.
Yeah.
Yes. Win.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I know, right? I find that I feel safer. I feel more confident. I am absolutely acknowledged by men in a way that I wasn't before, which makes me realize how ignored by men I was for the whole of my life.
Yeah.
It's very difficult sometimes to extract the feeling of being at home in myself and the disappearance of the dysphoria and that comfort from the comfort of the privilege of being male and the difference in how I'm treated. And I find like I have to keep a really close eye on that line between enjoying being a man and not taking advantage of being a man. So it's something that I have to be very careful of. The disadvantages that come with it are they exist, but they're so small as to be silly, good anecdotes, but not much more than that. So, for example, I have to be a lot more careful about how I talk to or treat women who I don't know. I can't coo at other people's babies anymore, which I find really sad because I love babies. And every time I see a baby, I just want to grab it and hug it. And now, whoa, I can't do that. I remember I was in a hotel. My son was at a volleyball tournament, and there was a knock on the door, and I opened it, and there was a little 5-year-old girl standing there. And I said to her, "Oh, hello." She said, "Hello." I said, "Are you lost?" And she sort of looked at me in that kind of, yes, I'm lost sort of way. And so I sort of crouched down and was chatting with her. And her sister, who must have been about 10 or 11, arrived. And the look of horror on this girl's face, the sister, and she grabbed her little sister and sort of pulled her away sharply, looking at me with suspicion. So that is, I'm not the friendly stranger anymore that I used to be.
Yeah.
And my kids pick up on it. So my kids are very good at instructing me what I am and aren't allowed to do. They say I'm not allowed to be so friendly anymore with people I don't know. So with a friend of one of their mothers who I hadn't met before, while I was chatting with her, I touched her on the shoulder, and my daughter was like, "You can't do that anymore. You can't just touch somebody on the shoulder." And I'm like, "Oh, God, yes, of course."
Do you miss
these
that?
little things that I do
that
miss it.
closeness and intimacy of female
Yeah, I really
friendships?
do. I really do. I do. But I will say, given the sacrifices that you guys have to make, it's a small price to pay. It just means I had to be more careful. And that's how it is. I mean, if I was born a cis man, I would have learnt that care from childhood. I hope if I'd had decent parents and a good upbringing, I would have learnt to be that careful from childhood. So that is just part of being a man. You just have to be more respectful.
Well, there is a perspective from a trans woman's point of view as well, that we absolutely cannot go up to a lost child.
Yes.
If we are clocked, we are potentially
in
dead.
deep trouble. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's still in the back of my mind.
Always for me, yeah.
Yeah, so you have a lot of what I have, and then more on top. So I would definitely say it's harder.
Yeah. I mean, there seems to be less focus on trans men in society. There doesn't seem to be many news reports shouting about male-identifying women cancelling men.
No, there's not. I mean, the aggression that comes towards us comes more at the youth level,
right?
To trying to stop trans men from becoming trans men in the first place. Once we're adults and we've transitioned, we generally become pretty invisible, and that's partly because we kind of are invisible. We're just like little men. We're not threatening because generally we're smaller than everybody else, and it's relatively easy to pass as a guy. It really is.
Yeah.
I can't remember her name. It's a woman that wrote Whipping Girl. Julia
Serrano.
Yeah, she said it's easier for trans men because nobody notices a 5'4" man, but they notice a 6'2" woman.
Oh,
exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
and that's probably why we get more focus.
Yeah,
because we don't blend so easily. So some of us don't want to blend.
Yes.
Yes. Well, exactly. I mean, if you look at Alok, who is out there not blending in a way that is just magnificent, and that's their whole raison d'etre, is to not blend and to walk down the street and say, "Fuck you, this is who I am."
Yes.
And you need to start getting used to this. And of course, that is what we want, isn't it? We want
think of anyone else that looks like
that. One Rachel. Alok lives in New York.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
They've written some beautiful, quite small books.
Yes, lovely poetry.
Yes.
Yeah.
And writing about, I mean, yes, they can be quite scared at times, but they are so full of, I don't want to have to give a fuck, so I'm going to be me. And I'm going to present in, with my hairy chest, in my dress, with my beautiful beard. And I am proud of who I am, so proud. And it's...
Yeah, and that is ultimately the path to trans acceptance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is having more visible trans people out there. I mean, that's one of my regrets about passing. I want to pass because I'm a trans man, and that's what makes me feel most comfortable. But I have lost my visible queerness now.
Yeah.
Which means that unless I'm talking about it or writing about it, I'm not actively changing the world's acceptance of queer people just by being out and about, just by that visibility that people who don't pass have and people who are non-binary have.
Oh, you could be there at a pride parade waving a trans flag and they'll be saying,
no, absolutely.
What a lovely ally you are.
Yeah.
But I'm not doing it in the supermarket, and my dream for the future is one where everybody gets to be whatever they want, wherever they want, whenever they want, for whatever reason they want, that there is no trans and cis, that there's just everybody saying this is low A, which is, I'm interested to hear what you guys think about this, because I was thinking about this the other day. I was reading something, I think, on them.us about queer baiting. So somebody was being accused of queer baiting. And I take issue with that accusation, because what I want is a world where anybody can wear what they want or kiss who they want, regardless of their orientation or gender identity, so that non-normal presentation and behavior becomes normalized.
Yeah.
And so therefore, to say you can only kiss somebody on stage if you're queer, or in the case of Harry Styles, you should only wear these clothes if you're trans, seems to me gatekeeping in a way that is just not really helpful to the trans community. What do you think about that?
I absolutely agree. Unfortunately, we are always fighting the dichotomy, because that's all it is, of binary gender.
Yeah.
And it's hard to know where that idea sprang from. Did it come from the Bible? Like, why is it so tightly ingrained in society?
White colonialism.
White colonialism.
I believe it's white colonialism. And yes, Christianity.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're still conforming to it now. Even though we're our true gender, we're stereotypically our true gender. I've got long red hair. I wear dresses, as is expected of a woman.
Well, yeah. So that's
yeah.
I was thinking of that, Oliver, when you were saying, why can't clothes be non-gendered? That's sort of where it goes. And it's, well, actually, if they were completely non-gendered, I don't know if that would work out so well for me. Because I so enjoy wearing feminine clothes.
Okay, it's not so much that I want clothes to be non-gendered, because I think that one of the reasons that our presentation is so important is it tells people who we are. And you can only have a true connection with somebody who can see you, and the way that we show who we are is by how we present externally. So when my kids say to me, if clothes aren't gendered, why do you wear men's clothes? I wear men's clothes because I want people to understand that I'm a man, because I am a man. That's why I can't grow a beard because my facial hair is ridiculous, but I don't shave properly because I like the stubble, because it indicates who I am, and I'm not sad about losing my hair because there is nothing more masculine than my current hairline. It's more that, as we know, not everybody is a binary gender, and therefore the people who are non-binary display that identity through wearing an amalgamation of clothes. And the more we normalize wearing clothes that don't conform, or presentations that don't conform to a binary gender, the easier it is for those people to move safely in society. So therefore, if we have people like Harry Styles going out there and wearing dresses, and if we have straight men kissing other men on stage at concerts, it's just normalizing a behavior that was once taboo. And making it easier and more socially acceptable for the people who are generally non-binary, or pansexual or bisexual, or any of the less binary genders or sexualities to move through life.
Yeah, that makes good sense. Can we talk for a moment about your second book?
We can, yes.
Firstly, I love the title. Frighten the Horses.
Frighten the Horses.
Yeah.
So do you know the history of that quote?
I don't care what they do in private, so long as they don't do it in the streets and frighten the horses.
Exactly.
And I didn't know who had said it. I had to look that up. Can you please?
Yeah, so it was an actress called Mrs. Patrick Campbell, and it sounds extraordinary to think that this poor woman didn't even have a proper name. She was just known by the name of her husband, but she was the original Eliza in Bernard Shaw's first production of Pygmalion.
No way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And her name was Beatrice.
Mrs.
But it was Beatrice Tanner.
It was Beatrice Tanner, but she was known as Mrs. Patrick Campbell. That was her stage name, or the name, or her professional name. And it's funny because there is no more gendered play than Pygmalion.
Yes.
And it is also a play about somebody pretending to be something that they're not. So Eliza in the play was trained by the patriarchy to be something that she wasn't.
Yeah.
And at the very end of the play, she almost sort of reverts back to her old self. She comes back in and says, I washed my hands and face before I come, I did. And of course, Henry Higgins is the, world's famous and great misogynist out there. And she was interviewed by a journalist about, and he asked her how he felt about the fact that it was back in the 1950s when homosexuality was still illegal, and she was asked what she felt about the fact that there was a couple of gay men in the chorus of the play. And she said, I don't care what they do in private as long as they don't do it in the street and frighten the horses. Of course, it became the kind of advocate for staying in the closet. And so I made it into an intention. Let's all get out there and frighten the bloody horses. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it.
And it's a memoir about my coming out and transition. It covers 10 years from the first day that I took the lid off the box of my sexuality and left it off, which happened bizarrely on 9/11 in 2011 at a motorcycle rally in Connecticut with my husband and my 4 children. And it then follows my path through the next 10 years as I come out as lesbian, as I sort of figure out how to leave my marriage and how to tell my children, and I start having my first relationships. And then throughout the memoir, my identity keeps bubbling to the surface, and I keep pushing it back down, and it keeps bubbling up, and I keep pushing it back down until halfway through the book when I'm like, oh, I don't think I can keep pushing this back down. And then the second half of the book is largely about me coming out as trans.
So any time did you think you'd left it too late? So I know a lot of trans femmes, they think, oh, I've been through puberty, I'm middle-aged now. I thought coming out, period, I had left too late. And in fact, the first conversation I had with my therapist after that motorcycle rally, I came out to him, I cried, I did all the kind of stuff that you do. And at the end, he said, what are you going to do now? And I'm like, well, I'm not going to do anything. I'm married with 4 children. I've left it too late. And I remember distinctly, he looked at me and he said, what if I told you it's not too late? And I took those words out of that room, and I think it was the greatest non-drug induced sense of euphoria that I've ever had. Wow.
I remember standing in my backyard thinking, what if it's not too late? I'm 40. I'm in a life that I simply cannot stand to be in for a day longer. And my therapist has basically just told me that there may be a way out.
Yeah.
And that was it. So from that point on, it was really just a matter of figuring out how and when. And I knew very quickly that I was trans after that moment, but it was too much for me to deal with, because I had to deal with coming out and telling my husband, telling my children, my family, getting divorced. There was so much to deal with in my life. There was no way I would have been ready to deal with that as well. And I had no queer community either. So I needed more stability around me in the way of queer community before I could start looking at that. So it took 7 years before I was ready to go, okay, this other thing that I've been sidelining, maybe we need to start looking at that now.
Yeah.
So to anybody out there who firstly thinks it's too late, no, it's not. And secondly, if it takes a long time, that's fine, because I think that our bodies and our minds and our hearts understand that this is like a really complicated process and it's a lot. And doing it slowly is sometimes the only way to do it. And then suddenly when you're ready, it happens really fast, because when I finally was ready to deal with my transition, it happened really quickly.
Did it become all consuming for you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It took over my whole life.
Everyone. Yeah, no, it's same for me, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I went from not knowing who I was, questioning why I feel different, to suddenly just thinking about every waking hour I'm trans.
Yeah.
Just going around in my head and what I needed to do, and how could I move forward with this?
Yeah.
Even though I knew I should probably put the brakes on and slow down. It's so difficult.
Yeah, you can't. You can't. I mean, it blew up my relationship just because it was so all-consuming.
Well, that
I couldn't think about anything but that.
That comes back to what we were talking about before, how from an outsider's point of view, our transitions seem very fast. What, you're trans, and then suddenly you're on your way and leaving them behind, or you know, they can't deal with it. Whereas we've been thinking about it for much longer than that.
Yeah, and I think
mentally transitioning.
Well, it's a pressure release, isn't it? I had all of this unknown pressure building up over 40 years.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it's like, oh, this is what it is, and it just all wants to come out then.
Yeah.
And
it's like a bursting dam. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to pull that thought back to the conversation we were having at the beginning about the way it's reported, and a piece in the press about a kid who, the way the story was written was he turned up for his first assessment at the gender clinic, and the next week was sent to the endocrinologist. And the way that was written was that he's just going to turn up, and then he's with the endo, and then he's on hormones, right? Without understanding that, firstly, he'd been on a waiting list for like 3 or 4 years just to get that first appointment.
Yeah.
So he'd been talking through this with his parents and whatever therapists they could provide for 3 or 4 years before that appointment. And then before he even spoke to his parents about it, this kid was probably thinking about it for 3 or 4 years, because there's no kid who wakes up one morning and goes, oh, I think I might be trans or non-binary. I'm going to tell my parents over dinner. You know, they are thinking, and they're researching, they're talking to friends, and eventually they pluck up the courage to tell their parents, and then their parents are talking with them about it, and then eventually they're like, okay, maybe we should get on a wait list. And then you get on the wait list and you wait several years. And then, of course, once you have that first appointment, they refer you to an endocrinologist. But there's probably another 3 years wait before the endocrinologist can see you or can. So this again goes back to the difference between what the experience is to how it's reported and therefore seen by everybody else.
Yeah, giving drugs to children, mutilating children.
Right.
You know, but none of that's true.
Exactly.
It's true.
Yeah. Yeah, if only it were some sort of pipeline where you just hopped on one end and came out the other a few months.
I know, it'd be very nice. You could just like lie down on a conveyor belt and wait for everybody else to do it for you.
Yeah.
Bit of elevator music as you go along.
But yeah, no, when you finally want it, and that is why it's so devastating for, you know, kids who are, and anybody who is, you know, trying to do this through the national health system, is because once you've accepted who you are, you just want to get that shit done fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the money to go private, and you're then told, well, you've got to wait 4 or 5 years before you can even see an endocrinologist. I mean, I can't.
It's longer than that. It's longer than that now.
Yeah. I mean, it's horrendous.
It's terrible. Like some late transitioners, if they don't have the money to go private, the wait lists are so long in some places that they might never be seen. And I can't imagine how unbearable that is.
No, I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Or over here in the States where it's now becoming illegal and these kids have been taken off the medications.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you would tear my testosterone out of my dead hands. Because if I couldn't take testosterone and my body started to revert, which it would, I wouldn't survive it.
No. Hey, that's interesting, because you once said that you wouldn't take testosterone because it would be too much for your body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but now
yes, that was a total lie. that was an excuse because I was terrified
Yeah.
of taking testosterone.
Yeah.
And
what terrified you?
What terrified me? Okay, so I spent quite a lot of time thinking about this because the terror was real. And so the excuses came, oh, I'm much too old to take testosterone. I can't do that to my body. But it was all due to fear. And it took me a really long time to figure out what that fear was. And the closest I can get to explaining it is I was afraid that I would lose my status. Whatever status I had developed through my femininity and through being attractive. And so this is complicated to break down, but if we think in very stereotypical terms,
Yes.
Okay, and I'm talking real stereotypes here. Women gain status through being attractive, through being slim, well-dressed, well-manicured. Men gain status through being large and powerful and successful and rich. And, I'm talking real stereotypes here. So when I was presenting as a woman, however deeply unhappy I was on the inside, I was working the privilege that I had as a slim, attractive, able-bodied white woman with long blonde hair. Right. And I knew that if I transitioned, I would lose all of that and I wouldn't gain any of the status markers that men have because I'm 5'3" and I'm not rich and I have no power. And so all I could see in my head was, I'm going to be a really unsuccessful man. I'm just going to be this little short man with no dick. And I'm going to have like zero status. And that was really frightening to me. And when we were talking about having those light bulb moments that I had when I was reading The Well of Loneliness, there's a writer and academic over here called Tressie McMillan Cottom, who wrote a piece, I think in the New York Times, I could be wrong there, about blonde status, about blonde as a status. And for many years, I had resisted cutting off my hair, and I didn't know why, because if I wanted to be more masculine, why was I so obsessed with holding onto my hair? And I read this piece and it was like a light bulb went on over my head. It was, it's my status. She's absolutely right. My whole status identity is tied up in my blondness. And that's not just my hair, it's my whole presentation. And so when I go on testosterone, I'm going to lose that. And it's like almost like reaching a kind of rock bottom, but calling it a rock bottom is the kind of wrong analogy because really it's that stepping off point of, okay, I'm just going to lose it all. I'm going to lose my status. I am going to stop worrying about whether I'm attractive anymore. I'm going to stop worrying about whether I can attract a partner anymore. I'm just going to say, fuck it to everything.
Yeah. Because
the only thing that matters now is that I transition and that I become the person who I need to be. And so that was the point I reached of saying of understanding that there was no possible way for me to be ever happy in this world unless I fully transitioned into a man with a receding hairline and the stubble and the voice and the hairy chest and, the redistribution of fat, as we very nicely call it.
How about BO?
And BO, God, I sweat now. Jesus. I did not understand what it was like to go running and have your shirt stick to your chest, but now I do.
How does that feel?
Oh, it's lovely.
Yeah.
I mean, I tell you, the nicest thing is mowing the lawn with my shirt off. Bloody hell, that's great. This is why I want to talk about this publicly, because if I felt this, then I can't be the only person who's feeling this. And I just want to say to everybody out there, just do it.
Yeah.
Because I don't care if I have no status.
Yeah.
I don't care if I'm not attractive. I don't care if I never get another partner again. I'm hoping I will. But if I don't care because I'm so comfortable and happy now.
So how do you think testosterone has affected you mentally? I've read other trans men say that they find that they're less emotional, they're more focused and decisive now. Have you experienced any of that? Yeah,
all of that. And again, it's difficult to know how much of that is a hormonal adjustment. It's difficult to extrapolate how much of that is because that is what the hormone does generally, and how much is because I just have the right hormone in my body now.
Yeah,
because I'm so much calmer. I'm not saying I used to thrive on drama, but drama was a very big part of my life. And now drama just has no appeal to me whatsoever. And I thrive on calm and stability, and that feels amazing. And I don't know whether that is because estrogen made me more emotional than testosterone, or I was simply more emotional because of the dysphoria and the distress and the unhappiness of being a trans person who hadn't transitioned. But what I do know is that whatever testosterone does to me, it feels like me. And I know that without that hormone in the body, I would no longer feel like me. The dysphoria would come back immediately, even if, a lot of the effects that testosterone have are irreversible. So even if I were to come off T, the majority of the physical effects that you see on me would stay.
Mm.
But I know that there would be a shift internally that I would feel and would be immediately distressing.
Mm.
And that's what I find so upsetting when I think about these kids in the southern states who are being told they have to come off these hormones, because I don't know how those kids are going to survive it. I really don't.
Especially MTFs who are being taken off puberty blockers. And so, everything that you love about testosterone is
what they're then going to be subjected to.
Poison, yeah, and irreversible.
Irreversible,
yeah. Yeah, it's horrendous. And knowing that, and again, I write about this in the book of essays that came out today, knowing for those kids particularly, knowing that they are going to watch themselves go through those changes, and that they're going to be irreversible, and that they're not only going to make it harder for them to pass as they grow older, it's going to put them in danger. And knowing that in other parts of the country, there are young girls who can just mature into young women with a minimum of fuss, and that is not available to them.
Yes.
That I just don't know how a kid survives that. And it's all very well to say relocate, but a lot of families don't have the means to relocate.
Well, plus I think the last count a few days ago, it's up to 22 states now, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a couple of days ago. It's probably gone up since then.
Yeah.
It's happening so fast.
It's happening so fast.
Yeah.
It's happening so fast that we can't keep up with it. And certainly the media can't keep up with it. And the media has to really stop paying attention, because it's like it's not even news anymore.
Yeah.
Another state has banned puberty blockers. Well, okay.
Oh, it's like another mass shooting. Yeah, we're not even going to...
It's like another mass shooting. Exactly. Here we go. Well, whatever.
Yeah. How about we head towards a brighter note?
Please do.
Okay,
let's do.
Lead us to the
Let's
light,
do.
Phoebe. Lead us into the light.
All right. So
lead us into the light. Exactly. I love that.
So it's always fun to have a discussion with anyone trans about how their puberty has been. As the hormones kick in and suddenly you're back there again as an awkward teenager. Not what's going on in your body or your mind or your heart.
Yeah.
Whew.
How was it?
Oh my God. Going through male puberty when you're in your late 40s, early 50s, girls. I mean, I'm glad I'm through it. I'm just saying, I'm glad I'm through it.
Well, it was bad enough to go through it in her teens. So.
Oh, bloody hell. Never again. So, I mean, just all the obvious things. The only thing that I didn't get, which people had warned me about, was the mood swings. I really didn't get the mood swings at all.
Yeah.
Because, and I think that's because, it just felt so good to be filled with testosterone that it made me calmer rather than more agitated. And also, I'd been a belligerent fuck for most of my life because I was so unhappy.
Yeah.
So I was really kind of losing that belligerence as I went on T. But the other stuff, acne at the age of 50, not fun. Glad I got through that one relatively quickly. The horniness, yeah. What can I say? It does wear off eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a lot of hormones to put in an adult body. And, I'm a parent of 4 kids. I don't get out much. I really don't have time for relationships right now.
Yeah.
So that's just a lot of kind of sex swimming around in my brain and in my body that doesn't really have anywhere to go.
Did it cause any shifting around in your sexuality?
No, it didn't. But I'm curious about that as well, because I have theories. So I was very open. I've had of a lot of trans men who previously only slept with women, who then became more attracted to men as they transitioned. And there was a question for a while, like on Reddit, does testosterone make you gay? Which I just think is one of the best questions you could possibly find on Reddit. Does testosterone make you gay? And I think the answer is no. I think what it does is it allows people who are already bisexual to explore those parts of themselves. And here's my theory about why. It didn't happen to me because I really am only exclusively attracted sexually to women. But I think if I had been bisexual or pansexual, prior to transitioning, I wouldn't have been able to sleep with a man because he would have seen me as a woman. So I would have only been sleeping with heterosexual men, which I did. But those heterosexual men saw me as a woman and therefore treated me as a woman, which obviously just increases your dysphoria. Whereas after you transition, you can sleep with gay men who see you as a man. And therefore, you're fully aligned sexually with your body. And I think that what people sometimes overlook is that, sex is a two-way thing. It's not just who you sleep with, it's who you are. That not dictates your sexual orientation, but your sexual orientation isn't just about who you sleep with. It's about who you are when you sleep with that person.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of trans men who previously identified as butch women were able to manifest that masculine identity in bed as butch women with femme women in a way that they never would have been able to with a man. Whereas post-transition, they can just be a man and they can be a top or a bottom or a versi or whatever they happen to want to be, whatever, floats their boat, but they could do that with a man just as much as with a woman because they're being seen in bed for who they are.
Yeah, I always like to say, I don't think your sexual orientation changes, but your frame of reference does.
Yeah, exactly.
You reorientate yourself, but so you're coming at it from a different.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really opened myself up to the idea of, could I be a gay man? Because I kind of would like that. I would like to be a gay man. I think that'd be really fun because my community is queer. And so if I was a gay man, I would slot straight back into my queer community with no problems. Whereas as what's known as a trans het man, I'm probably going to be dating straight women, I guess, or pansexual women, which would be easier, I think. But if I date straight women, that either then I have to step out of the queer community or they have to step into it. It feels a little bit more complicated. So I love the idea of being a gay man, but unfortunately I'm not, which is disappointing. But yeah, no, it's just women for me. I am pretty much one of the old school born that way trans het people.
Yeah. The change for me was that I found I didn't want to be with a man anymore because, frankly, I suddenly felt too vulnerable. Part of it was me saying, well, I know what testosterone does and I don't trust that stuff anymore. And I don't want to be that close, that intimate with anyone who has it coursing through their body.
Yeah, I can see that. Unless they've been socialized female first, of course.
Yes.
Like
exactly.
me.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but
I mean, I tried T on T. I had a great T on T relationship with someone who has now become one of my closest friends.
Yeah.
But it was very clear from very early on in the relationship that this was a romantic friendship, not a sexual relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think for me, it was more that I couldn't be attracted to what I didn't like about myself.
Right.
That was what it was. You know, but having said that, I've been a little bit confused since I transitioned.
Yeah.
I've always like, yeah, I'm into women. That's all it is. I'm into women. And yet on nights out, I have found myself on occasion in the company of men on the dance floor. And I don't know if I'm actually attracted to them or it's their attraction to me that gives me that validation.
No, I'm not going to speak for you, but I will speak for that validation, because I used to get that before I came out. There was something about male sexual attention that was very intoxicating. And so I confused myself. I'm like, well, am I attracted to him? But no, I mean, the kissing and the sex, but the intoxication of that attention. And for me, it was not validating who I was. It was proof that I was pulling off the facade successfully.
Mm.
And so weirdly, getting attention from kind of toxic assholes was even more of a validation that I was being a successful woman, because I was being so successfully a woman that I was attracting the attention of people who only look at surface. It's really fucked up.
Yeah, no, that's probably exactly what it is for me as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I remember thinking at the time, he's whispering in my ear, like, you're the most beautiful girl in here. And I'm just thinking, ha! Are you in for a surprise?
Well, I mean, he wasn't wrong.
No, he wasn't wrong, Rachel. Yeah, it's these things are so, for queer people, these things are so entangled and braided together. It sometimes takes a lifetime to separate out all the different braids and figure out what's me, what's not me. What do I want? What do I don't want? What do I not want? What have I been socialized to think that I want?
Yeah. I think it might go some way to explaining my own constant cishet relationships with detours along the way, which was a very similar thing. It's, wow, I'm pulling off this guy thing so well. This is very validating for me, for my ongoing performance. Once I came out, of course, I could throw off the old clothes and, you know, the suits and how I had to try to conform in things like business meetings. But the relationships along the way were I'm doing that right as well.
But I mean, it's understandable because we are primed from childhood to be successful.
Yeah.
You know, we're taught that whatever we do, we have to be successful at it.
Or you learn that you do.
Or you learn that you do. You're conditioned. You're conditioned to strive for success. So whatever you're doing, you want to be as successful at it as possible. So if what you're doing is trying to be this person that you're expected to be because you're trying to please everybody, you're trying to do it as well as possible. And any validation that you're doing that well is going to give you that endorphin kick, even while it kind of destroys your soul.
Yeah.
The interesting question is there a way to be a successful trans person? Because originally the idea of a successful trans person was a trans person who passed, but that's playing into the same binary preconception that cis has a higher status to trans, and therefore to be a successful trans person, you have to be as close to cis as possible, even if that means going as far with your transition as you can. Whereas I would argue that the most successful trans person is someone like Alok, who is willing to go out there as 100% authentic to themselves.
Yep.
And wear that all day, every day, in spite of the constant pushback from the whole of society.
And I think that's also answered by, how do you know when you've transitioned enough where do you stop? And it's not to meet anyone else's expectation.
No.
It's when you've resolved your dysphoria or done everything you can that will help it.
Exactly. And the thing is about that is that when you've got there, and when you haven't got there.
Yeah.
Like me trying to stop at non-binary. I'd had top surgery. I was only wearing masculine clothes. My hair was short. I was androgynous as they came.
Yes.
And I was like, please, can I just stop here?
Yeah.
I don't want to stick a needle in my bum once a week the rest of my life. It's a pain in the arse. But literally a pain in the arse.
There's the soundbite right there.
Right.
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
there you go. This is just another version of it's all going to be okay in the end.
Yeah.
And if it's not okay yet, that just means it's not the end.
Yeah, and also it's okay for the pendulum to swing a bit far and then go, oh, no, I don't want to be here. I'm going to swing back a little bit.
Yeah.
Which is a lot we hear of a lot of trans women who say, yeah, you know what, I've transitioned fully, but I still feel like I'm a little bit more non-binary. And who then go forward identifying as non-binary because, one assumes that they found alignment in their body and their physical sense of self. And yet they're really not going to buy into that whole, yeah, I'm a binary gender deal.
Yes.
Because, how many of us in the world really are binary gender? Is anybody really? No. If we were to break down every single human being in this world and take away all the kind of societal conditioning, is anybody a binary gender? Probably not.
It's like asking, is anybody truly straight?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any bloke in a pub or whatever saying, so you're going to tell me you've never looked at another guy and said, they're attractive, right? Not say, wow, they're well built or whatever. I admire their form or something.
Yeah.
There's a little tingle.
Hey, he's a good looking guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all
but I think gender even more so, because whereas sexual attraction is understood by people to be something that one acts on, that sex as an act is something that you have to step towards. Your gender is innate. And we are so conditioned in our gender, even more so than in our sexual orientation, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if you removed all of that conditioning from the majority of men who refer to them as a cisgender, I just think you'd find something very different going on.
Yes. Wouldn't that be interesting?
Wouldn't it?
If
we could make it illegal to be cisgender.
Wait, I'm going to call up the head of our cult and find out if they can.
Yes, exactly. How we can do this.
Plan B. We need Plan B right now. Start seeding the clouds.
Exactly. We do have a transgender, and it is to make everybody trans. Sorry, but that's the truth.
Right,
you're absolutely right about us. We're really freaking dangerous.
Yeah, the time is here. Turn on that special 5G thing and enact.
Exactly. Let's do this. Let's do this.
Oh, the vaccine.
The vaccine as well.
Vaccine.
Yeah. We have many ways of.
We're transing everybody.
Yeah. Well, I met you when I was a baby trans. I think I met you about a month after I'd had my first HRT. And you were...
I don't think you'd even started HRT when we met.
No way, really?
No, you hadn't started.
Oh!
That was about 6 months later. So when you met me, you were just saying the words. You were social transition phase.
I was amongst my people.
You were amongst your people. You were like, say this now. It's okay. It's safe.
Yeah.
It was really wonderful to watch.
Well, I don't know about transing the whole world, but you did help me.
Did I trans you, Phoebe?
You gave me a sense of
Please say yes.
surety. Yes, you totally transed me. and thank God you flipped the switch the other way when you did, because imagine me becoming even more male than I was.
Oh my God. No.
Yeah. No.
More male than you were pretending to be.
More male than you were pretending to be. You were doing a remarkably good job as well, just as I was when I was pretending to be a woman. We were quite successful at that.
We're very good at hiding in plain sight.
Oh, yes.
Nicely said. Yeah. And your books, hopefully, will not only quell what is happening out there with the one published today.
Today?
Anxiously waiting for your doorbell to ring and for the dog to
any
sound
minute
its
now. And then I'm going to do the ceremonial box opening with my dog, because all my children are at school, and anyway, they couldn't give a fuck. So, and then, then here it is, my new book. And
you have some readings planned?
Look, I have got a bunch of readings planned, all in America at the moment. I am hoping to come over to England next February, sometime around the 20th. So
we'll put that date in our calendars.
Yeah, put the date in your calendars, and I will let you know. I'm going to be calling up the bookstores and seeing if I can do a few readings over there.
Absolutely.
But look, honestly, if it just changed the heart and mind of one person, I will have done my job.
Well, I'm sure you will. You already did it for me, so...
There you go.
Yeah.
And then the memoir, which is obviously a lot longer and a bit bigger.
Yes.
Which is, at the moment, scheduled to be published next July. So, yeah, it's like London buses. You wait forever for a publishing contract, and then two come along at once.
Do you have any more planned? What's in your future?
I do. I am drafting a novel.
Whoa!
Yeah, I'm going straight into it. Yeah, I'm there.
Oh my gosh.
I don't want to write any more nonfiction for a while, because I've just written 2 nonfiction books.
Yes.
So I figured there's a lot of stuff that I couldn't write about in the memoir.
Yeah.
Because there's just places you can't go when you're writing about yourself and people you know.
So wrap it up in fiction?
So let's wrap it up in fiction. Let's get really down and dirty in fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. Carte blanche to go wherever I want to go.
Oh.
Yeah, that's going to be really fun. It's going to be a while. I haven't written fiction before, so... I mean, I have in short stories, but not something of this length. So I don't know how long it's going to take. But watch this space. That'll be what's next. And, and hopefully, the odd essay or op-ed or whatever along the way.
Oh, well, I think I speak for Rachel too when I say we can't wait to get down and dirty with you.
Me neither. I can't wait for your feedback. I want to know what you think.
Thank you, Oliver.
I just have one final question.
Go on.
Yes.
Any regrets from transitioning?
Whew.
Such a small question that has so much weight to it.
Do I have any regrets? No. I have losses, but not regrets, and that's different.
It's a good answer.
Yeah, no regrets. Absolutely none. I would do it all over again with spades and earlier.
Yeah.
Guess that answers the button question. And
that does, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah, none. No. Ladies, it's been such a pleasure to be here.
Really
with
has.
you. Thank you for having me on my special day.
Oh.
Like my birthday,
I'm just gutted that you didn't get to unbox in front of us.
I know, I'm very sad. That's very disappointing.
No.
I know, maybe if I get it later, we'll have to hop back online and we can have a quick ceremonial unboxing that you can edit in at a later date.
That would be good.
That would be good. Yeah. All right.
Oh, thank you so much.
Oh my God, this has been so much fun. It's so lovely to see your beautiful faces.
Ah, and your ugly mug too.
And my ugly mug.
She's only saying what we were all thinking.
It's great, isn't it? It's just great. It's great just to not care anymore. All right, lovelies.
All right, may your doorbell ring. And never stop frightening the horses.
I never will, Phoebe.
No.
And you and Rachel too.
Yeah.
I love you both very much.
Oh.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.